I think LTD said he was coming and maybe a few more, but this is 10, so we're at the limit of hands, but we can have screenshot umpires to supplement this. Is someone recording this, by the way, Tunis? Did you say that you were? All right. Okay, is everyone here? And I'll start for if someone wants to stream for the people who are still joining. Go ahead. I've put together a little quick reference sheet, which sort of summarizes the basics of the system. It's just one page. It's not super comprehensive, but it's just a reference, as I said. So we'll go over movement first. Movement's relatively simple. If I'll just grab some units here to demonstrate. So if you are where is there like a major road? There's one here. If you are let me actually just grab this first. If you are on a major road in what we would call ideal conditions, so that's flat ground in column, no enemies in sight. In this situation, there's artillery, but let's pretend this is no enemies in sight. You can move up to 4 grids, and we're doing 20-minute turns. So, and 4 grids in 20 minutes, and then for each complication, you're going to subtract 1 grid, which is 400 paces or 300 meters. From that, common complications are listed on the QRS. So we've got receiving if a new order has been given. So for example, if a unit had been ordered to hold for the time and then it just received an order to march, it would receive, depending on how far away they were, a relatively severe penalty. Even if the commander is right next to the unit, they would still receive a 1 grid penalty. But if they were further away, you could up it to 2 or 3 or 4. A simple thing, if you that we're kind of using or experimenting with, is just the distance from the commander to the piece. That's how they get that subtracted from their movement. So if they're 4 grids away, it doesn't move at all that turn, and it takes until next turn to move. Then we've got being off-road. So if you're in columns, off-road, you would move only 3. If you're going uphill, you might move only 2. And if you're in line, that's another complication, so you'd probably move only 1. And you can subtract it even further. If you're like in line going through woodland or crossing a stream, you're going to move probably only half a grid or even less. Any questions on infantry movement? All right. Cavalry is fairly similar. It's just the base rate's different. So they've light cavalry has a base movement rate of 7, and heavy cavalry has a base movement rate of 8. Light being lancers and hussars and chasseurs, heavy being dragoons and cuirassiers for movement purposes. At the moment, we're just using some placeholder pieces for the French, since the fill ones aren't completely done yet. But the Prussians are all done, but the cavalry, we've just got light and heavy pieces. So you need to actually read it to work out what type it is. But well, then next, any questions on cavalry movement? All right. Artillery is the same as infantry for movement, apart from unless it's limbered up. So if it's deployed, if it's deployed, it basically can't move at all, apart from maybe minor adjustments and things. Then we've got combat. We'll go over that now. So when the basics of the system is that you've got 4 dice here. We've got the equal dice, we've got the minor advantage dice, I'll ping over here. We've got the minor advantage dice, the major advantage dice, and the overwhelming advantage dice. This is basically what you're using to resolve all combat. By the principle of, I'll go over it with infantry, like firefights to begin with, and then it's the same general principles for charges and cavalry and so on, but there's some minor things you should be aware of with them. So, infantry range is about 200 paces, which is half a grid. There is skirmishers at longer range, which I'll get to in a moment, but Yeah. So by default, you're using the equal dice. Then for each shift that's applicable, there's a list of shifts here. So higher total QR, that is quality rating. So if you hover over a unit, you can see the quality rating of it. This is basically size plus morale, the general quality of the unit. So having a higher QR overall will give you a +1 shift. So in this case, the Prussians have all got 3, the French have got 1. So it's obviously the Prussians have an advantage. So we're moving it over to the minor advantage to the Prussians. Then we're going to have a look at terrain advantage. Well, there's no terrain here, but say one side or the other was on a hill, you get an uphill type of advantage, or maybe if they were defending in a woodland, you might get an advantage. Artillery superiority. Say, for example, the French had a battery of artillery. They would get a +1, which would bring us back down to even. But then say the Prussians had 2 batteries.
So it's whoever has the most firepower in engagement has the advantage.
Sort of, but sort of. But say in this situation, the Prussians have 2 batteries. That would mean they get the artillery superiority, which would bring us up to the major advantage dice. Does anyone have any questions on that? Because that's sort of the core of the system.
Hold on. So whoever has the advantage gets the dice, and what did the French, for example, get?
So you only roll 1 dice for the whole thing.
All right.
So you start, when you're calculating a combat, you would group it. So you'd say all of these units are in one group, and we're resolving them all with a single die. Generally, you do it by sort of conditions. So say you've got one part of a line's in a woodland, one part's in open terrain. You would group them separately, so that since the modifiers and things are going to be substantially different there.
Gotcha.
Although even if, obviously, don't resolve the whole line with a single roll, you can break it up by maybe a division at most as a single roll. So say, so you start, we'll say this is the actual situation, but say the French have some high ground here. I'll just sketch. This is our hill. So in this situation, we start with a even die. Then we say the higher QR, total QR. The French have a total of 3. The Prussians have a total of 9. So obviously that gives an advantage to the Prussians. Then we look at terrain. In this case, the French have the high ground. So that brings us back down to even. But then we look at artillery. The Prussians have more artillery in support. So that brings it back up to a minor advantage to the Prussians. Is that all understood? Yeah? At a point, technically not in the rules, but if it's like the old guard attacking a bunch of militia, even if the militia have the high ground, you should still obviously give the old guard a pretty big advantage. So that would be sort of umpire judgment if you say, this is ridiculous. Yeah. It's just for simplicity, we don't have like bands of QR differences or whatever, because it's just much easier for the maths if you can just quickly glance at them and see they've got more. That means it's 1 shift, rather than actually calculating them and then subtracting one from the other would be a bit of a mess for all right, then we've got we roll the dice. Since this is an infantry firefight, we're looking at the central column. The top column would be for a charge, the lower columns for skirmishing. So this is a disadvantage disrupted. In this case, the French are at a disadvantage. That would mean that they are disrupted, which means that they hold their positions, but they all take a disruption. And I believe the artillery probably would as well, yeah. But the other results available, we've got retreat, which means that they take a disruption, but they also fall back until they are safe. I don't know if the artillery probably wouldn't be able to fall back if the Prussians were advancing, but until they're safe, meaning usually behind another line, or if they don't have a reserve line, they would just keep falling back until they're well out of musket range of the enemy. So that means obviously reserves are important because it makes it easier to recover your fresh units. Then we've got route, which means you go to the stage 2 and you keep running till you're in the rear area of the formation, but then you can recover. And then quite rarely, but occasionally, we've also got shattered / surrendered, which is this third one. And that means that they're either going to run off the map and not coming back, or surrender to the nearest unit, depending on what you think is appropriate. If a routed unit is charged by cavalry, they automatically jump straight to shattered. You don't need to roll a dice. What else? Oh yes, if a unit already has a disruption, so say we had this result, they're exchanging fire, the French get disrupted in the first turn, then it's the next turn. I would probably give the Prussians a larger advantage since the French are disrupted now. Then we roll for this. Say we roll. Say we roll again a disadvantage disrupted. Even though because they're already disrupted, they jump straight to rout, and it's basically the same as if they had routed. Is that all clear for infantry firefight combat?
Yeah.
All right. Artillery is, or we'll go over actually infantry charges next, since they're very similar. If infantry is charging, it's essentially exactly the same. You're just looking at the top column on the die, so it's generally a lot more decisive. Yeah, it's just say we roll. Actually, it would be this die in this situation. That's a 12, disadvantage shattered, so they either just run or surrender or a mix, whatever you judge to be appropriate. Then we'll have artillery. I'll go over. It's fairly simple. Most of the time, it's just going to be providing a die shift to infantry or cavalry. However, in cases where, say they're just bombarding the line before the attack, so say you've got French infantry's somewhere else, and the French have a grand battery or something. I don't know. That for each artillery battery, you get one disruption on an enemy unit. So it might be something like this. Disrupted artillery cannot fire for a turn, basically, until it recovers. Artillery can recover disruption just after a turn, though, whereas infantry need to fall back to somewhere safe and spend a turn. Artillery doesn't need to be safe generally. And obviously, if they then shot again, they would actually be able to force these units to recover under heavy artillery fire, or force the gunners to abandon their guns, which might look more like that. But is that all clear with artillery and infantry charges?
Yeah.
All right. Now we'll go over cavalry as sort of the last major element of the system. Cavalry is very similar to infantry charges. You're just basically taking different things into account. Let me grab a couple. The system is quite heavily reliant on umpire judgment. If you haven't noticed already, it's you basically just pick a die and then roll. So say typically you might, this is a fairly typical cavalry formation. In this situation, we've got a bunch of chasseurs versus some Prussian dragoons. In this case, I'd probably give a minor advantage to the dragoons, since they're sort of one. You could argue for a major advantage depending on the specifics, but I think this is fair since. Yep. And then in this case, we rolled a 12, which means it's disadvantage shattered. So these guys, the chasseurs, are pretty much done for the day. We do also, one thing to note actually that is different is every unit involved in a cavalry charge, even if they're victorious, gets a disruption, and that takes quite a while to recover. Cavalry takes a while to recover generally. They take more like half an hour to two or tee turns to recover rather than the 1 turn infantry does. In safety, that is. Then this next turn is probably going to be, I'd give a minor advantage to the chasseurs since they have their attacking disrupted cavalry. Although they still rolled a 1, so it's advantage routes. And then this would be a Prussian pretty successful charge in this situation. That's basically how cavalry works. It's fairly similar to infantry. Any questions on how to resolve cavalry combat? No, but I would judge that at that point they probably couldn't charge essentially again. If it's immediately afterwards, they're going to be able to continue, but right now I don't think they're really in a condition to pursue. So I'd say they need to more or less stop at that point. Cavalry that's disrupted, unless they're immediately going after units they just broke, can't generally pursue or charge. Which is why you have a second line.
Wouldn't the second cavalry line?
Yeah, the Prussians would probably.
Wouldn't the second line have charged instead of the first line?
Yeah, in real life, the Prussians would probably commit their second line to pursue, and then ride down the French cavalry. But it was just sort of an example. Felix, did you have a question there?
If the turns are 20 minutes, wouldn't like the second line already take part in the battle in the first turn?
Yes. Yes, you're right. Although for sort of gameplay purposes, I think it's kind of hard for the players to understand in a single turn. So much is happening, so we sort of abstract it a little bit and usually resolve it over 2 turns. Yeah, I mean it's not accurate, but yeah, it's just for gameplay purposes. You can argue it's an abstraction or whatever, but yeah, it's just gameplay purposes, so that players have a better understanding of what's actually going on. You know.
Okay.
Any other questions on any element of the system? Or umpiring in general, I suppose.
So how many players are there?
I believe we've got 33 spots available. So we're going to... I'm still... Achilles, do you have the French deployments for me?
I'm doing them now.
All right. Once Achilles gets in the deployments, we'll be able to start assigning umpires and so on. Or I suppose we can sort of start now. So we've got...
I'm sorry.
The Prussians just gave in their deployments, or they changed them just there as well. So
I did have one question regarding the Senate reports.
Sure. Oh yeah, screenshots. I didn't go over that.
Yeah, screenshots. Doing like line of sight. About how far is that?
Generally 3 grids is fairly typical.
Okay.
In every direction. Although once
course.
combat starts and there's smoke and things, you can reduce it to like 1 grid or even less. And
Okay.
obviously take into account hills and things.
Right.
All right. So these are...
How big is the grid?
400 paces or 300 meters.
Thanks.
Okay.
Let's go with... Yeah. Yep. Thanks. That's very helpful. I'm just marking out the 3 sort of sectors. So these are these guys. All right. So that should actually be a. So is anyone? I know Tunis, you were going to lead a sector. LTD, I messaged and he said he was coming. He's fairly experienced, so he's probably qualified to as well. But I don't know if he's not here yet, so I can't guarantee he'll show up. You know. So, does anyone else volunteer? Felix, you're doing dispatches, aren't you? So,
Yes.
who else is? Dave, I suppose you could. Yeah, Dave, you're probably the most experienced here. Do you want to lead a third of the battle?
I could do that for you. Yeah. You'll have to forgive me. I did miss the first 10 minutes of you explaining movement and stuff like that, and then it took another 20 minutes to actually get the board to load.
Were you there for the rules? Do you know how to resolve combat and things, or?
Yeah, more or less. But I'll probably be. Yeah. I mean, I saw you roll the dice and stuff, but.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a practice in general,
Yeah.
so I might just if LTD doesn't show up, I'll probably dissector. If he does, I'll basically bounce between all of you. I'll probably do the CNC's umpire for them, and also just bounce between everyone else and make sure everyone's on the same page and things.
Can I help you as well?
Yeah. All the other umpires are going to be assistant umpires. In general, when you're moving pieces, you don't need to draw out the orders first and then move them. Just move them as soon as you get the orders while you're in the player's VC, because that saves quite a lot of time. Yeah, so mostly to the lead umpires. Make sure things are moving fast. To keep coordinated, we're basically going to be in the umpires chat. When you're finished your sector, which is A, B, and C sector, write like A sector finished for blank turn or whatever. And then once all of them are done, I'll put in a message saying move on to next turn or whatever. And then we move on. But apart from that, each of the three sectors are going to be operating separately in different voice channels completely. Bar occasional situations you can message someone when there's units from different ones interacting. But try and basically run. We're basically running 3 games that happen to be on the same map.
Do the players know that also?
No, I mean it doesn't really affect them, because if stuff interacts, we'll obviously still resolve it. But well, the sectors, they're on the same general map, so the sectors are going to be players essentially. So if a core moves, the sector moves with it essentially. Or a division or whatever moves. The umpire remains the same. It's just the sectors sort of split. If there's a situation where like a division gets shifted right to the other side of the flank and the rest of the core is not with it, then we'll probably shift that and we'll work that out. Yeah. I would just you can ping it and go in their VC, or they can go in your VC and say, "Hey, this needs resolved." You resolve it, and then you go back to the other stuff. Does that make sense? How would you know what? How would you know that? No. This is the only table. Yeah, I mean, we're basically running 3 autonomous in terms of umpires coming and reporting, and they'll all be in the same voice chat. So you'll just be able to see. There's only one table. At Waterloo, we'll be running multiple tables, but it's more going to be like operational marching between them and things. All right. Do you have anything that you're not 100% sure about, especially lead umpires?
Do we know like what's the general plan of the players? At least like.
I've not got the French deployment in yet. Achilles, do you want to summarize the French plan if you're not busy? All right, I guess he's busy. Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm busy trying to do the
I
fre- the-
believe.
yeah,
Or
the
go
French
ahead.
position here.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Blazer.
Yeah.
How specific? I mean, I'm putting these guys generally where I want them, but obviously
The
the core
positions you
commanders. Yeah.
the
Go
positions
ahead.
you put them in will be the positions they are in at the start of the game.
Okay.
So I mean, obviously, if they want to make some minor adjustments during the game, that's fine. But like, we don't have time to consult with the core commanders in the next 15 minutes. So yeah.
Alrighty.
Tunis, do you want to try resolving a combat? And Dave, just so that you're all clear on the system, I can give you a little sort of exam
Yeah, okay.
on combat. Yeah. Let me just. I'll do it far away from the other stuff. Oh, also, if a player orders a whole unit, like they might order their whole Fusilier battalion to deploy as skirmishers, you can just put it in front and remember that they're skirmishers, and they obviously only use the skirmish die, even if they're in musketry range. Even if the enemy are unless they charge them, then they would just push them back. But even if the enemy is trying to fire as line infantry, they would still just roll a skirmish die. Skirmish die can also represent long range or ineffective fires, basically any fire beyond 200 paces, or any infantry interaction beyond 200 paces, or even things like, if a unit looks intimidating as it advances, that would be considered a skirmish, sort of, in terms of the system, because it's. So you might think, if you see occasionally a disrupted unit will rout just because of a skirmish. If that happens, you could describe that they see the grenadiers of the enemy unit advancing and panic and rout or whatever, rather than saying they got hit with so many voltigeurs that they've just run.
Never mind.
Or what were you gonna say?
No, I was thinking so if the player orders, I don't know, his men to scream and charge, so does that count?
Screen and charge?
Yeah, being loud, I guess, scary.
Scream. Well, if they're charging, it would be a charge. But
what if they just stand and scream, to act scary, sort of?
I've never seen.
Describe it.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone order their units to be scary in front of the enemy to try and scare them off. So, yeah.
Just while looking at the map, I already have a quick question regarding height differences, because for me it's not immediately clear how the color coding works.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Basically, the lighter areas are higher than the darker areas.
Okay.
And the darker areas are slopes. If at the sharp ending, so I ping over here. So I'll demonstrate. So
the town of Lingni is in a valley along a river.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you can see these. I don't know if you can see. Can you see my measuring thing?
Yes.
This is the slope here. This is the lower edge. This is the higher end. And the darker the slope area, the steeper the slope. So over here, for example, it's a pretty light slope. Over here.
Okay.
Whereas here it's pretty steep.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you.
Hopefully. Isn't that just a map changing?
No, there is. If you look, say, here, between here and there, it's sort of different. Part of it is the map changing, but it's also the actual difference. In the actual game, we'll have a 3D map, so we'll just use that. But yeah, all right. Tunis and Dave, do you want to try resolving this little combat here? I say, as a French commander, I order my My the 22nd line will advance upon the enemy skirmishers along the stream and repel them with the cavalry awaiting in support. I don't know. That's my orders. What do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's probably.
I'd probably give a slight advantage to the guys on the hill. Because with the skirmishes and the fact that they've got a river and
at the moment it would just be, can the French push off these skirmishers first?
Right.
Honestly, I'd probably roll a skirmish even, but even if the Prussians win, they still get pushed back because it's just how much damage do they do and take, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So do you? Yep. Advantage 1. Obviously, there is no advantage in this case. That means that the for simplicity, we're saying the French are always advantaged when it's even. And the Prussians are always disadvantaged. It doesn't actually affect the odds. It's just for we need some way to name it. So. No, because this is just a skirmish, remember? So you're looking at the bottom dice, or the bottom row, sorry, which means it's 1, so it's 1 disruption. Like as in 1 on a single unit.
Oh, that's what the number means.
And then the Prussians would probably fall back. I'll just say they fall back to there. While the French advance, but they take some skirmish fire. Let's say next, the Prussians' orders are just hold position, and the French orders are advance into musketry range and begin exchanging fire. So I'll just move them. Something like that, whatever. How would you resolve this? For now, they're remaining in reserve.
They're being scary.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Overwhelming or major? I think it's fair to go with either, but yeah.
Yeah, I probably agree.
Overwhelming makes it basically impossible for the disadvantage to win. Bar incredible luck, and even then they can just sort of hold for a bit. Okay. Yep. Fair. It's not charged, remember. They're just exchanging fire at this point. So how would you apply that?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And I can't interact with. Oh, okay. So I can see that they're QR2. So I mean, make that one a red, and then the 2 guys either side are yellow, and then everyone else a yellow on top if they're both coming disrupted.
Yeah, the French got pretty lucky then. Well, they literally got as lucky as they can get in that situation. The routed unit was also run because they're routed.
Right.
All right. Let's say that the French player now orders the cavalry to go across the river and screen while the other units fall back. How would you resolve that?
If they're only screening, then probably the same again. Like, if they're told to fall back and they're just pounding them with canister and whatever while they're retreating.
I would generally, as a rule, if a unit is engaged and ordered to retreat, it goes straight to rout. Because
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think there's actually something missing from these tokens. There should be a permanent disruption for after units recovered. I don't know. Let me grab that a sec. I don't know what's up with that. I'll just grab it from one of my modules, but keep resolving out just for minor technical difficulties, I suppose. If they've ordered a retreat, when you're engaged, the only real way, unless you're super duper disciplined, to get out is to rout. So they've basically ordered a rout, essentially. Which isn't always a bad thing, but usually is.
What?
Well, unless they got shattered, which I think is probably unlikely, they're not probably going to take anything worse than a rout. So there's no point rolling. And also artillery only gives a single disruption in anyway, so. Yeah, these are range of artillery is 5 grids.
So wait, hold on, I have a question. So if, for example, I have the artillery like over here in the back, right? Does that also count?
No, because artillery can't fire over your own units.
No, like, but if it's, I don't know, then here, fine. So it has an angle.
If it's firing, I think you'd kind of struggle to. Well, I suppose it. Yeah, I suppose if you can fire on
let's
it,
say
then
like
yeah.
it's this situation sort of, and it's like firing. Do you count?
Yeah, if you can. Yeah. That's actually a good point. It doesn't need to be right up at the front giving grape shot. If it's supporting the attack in any way, it counts as a modifier if you have artillery superiority. One last thing is once units retreat, they did I actually I just oh no, yeah. They get a these are slightly outdated tokens that I spawned in accidentally, but when a unit's routed and it recovers, it gets a permanent disruption, which basically means that it's taken some amount of casualties and had some damage to its morale, and it's basically disrupted for the rest of the game. And so taking a single other disruption will put it back to routed. So they're mostly spent. So even if they can go back in the line, but you know,
they won't be as effective.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And if they take a surrendered shattered, they're just gone. They're running off the map, or you can just delete them. Although ideally, they can still clog stuff and have chain morale effects. So yeah. That's another thing to bear in mind is that if a routed or shattered unit runs past people, you should give them a disruption or rout them if they're already disrupted, because chain morale is quite important.
Is there literally no way back for that unit to come?
If a shattered unit's routed, basically, I mean, maybe if Napoleon himself runs over to it and tells them to get back in the line, they might, but generally no.
Okay.
I
mean, yeah.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Can you show me how to send you this?
It might. Do you know how to upload something to the workshop?
No, I don't know jack about TTS for the most part.
Okay. Let's just do it with the workshop. So go to modding.
Okay.
Workshop upload.
Modding workshop upload. Got it.
Name it. I don't know, Lingy French deployments or something.
Okay. Where it says flex table, I just changed the name to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're also going to you'll need to include an image. Just grab some image off the internet and type the URL in there, or copy paste it, or just any image from your computer. It doesn't really matter what it is. You just need some image.
Okay. How do I do that?
There'll be a file that you just click and then you just upload any old file that you've saved as like a picture or something.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm putting. Where would I put that? I put that in the workshop thumbnail URL.
Yeah,
That's the one.
Okay. So I need to
or
just upload an image.
actually, you know what? I'll just send you. Type this URL. It's a random Napoleonic sketch. Just type this URL into that thing.
Okay. Let's see.
So click on the image I sent you, and click Open in Browser.
Okay. Click on the image. Right. Right click on it. Then do what?
You should see a little click Open Link or Copy Link. Sorry, Copy Link.
Copy link. Got it. Okay.
And then paste that into the image URL thing.
Ah. Okay.
While we are at it, I got a question regarding artillery.
Yep, go ahead.
So if I understand well, there is no real advantage having your artillery close to the fight, right?
It would count as the exact numbers sort of depend, but in general, say a situation where one side had artillery at long range, one side had it at close range, I would give, all things being equal, apart from that, I would give the advantage to the one at close range. So you can say an artillery at close range is worth about 2 long range artilleries, maybe 1.5. But
okay, so I've copied it in there, and now what do I do? Upload?
Now upload, yeah.
Oh, okay. Getting upload. Okay, your upload to workshop was successful. Save this number to update the mod in the future. Blah blah blah. You still need to go to your workshop page. It says. Okay.
Yeah. So if you press Games at the top left, you should now see listed in the workshop the thing you just uploaded.
Okay.
So then you see when you're hovering it the little 3 dots.
Yes.
Click that and then click Info.
Got it.
Then it might take a second to upload the Steam thing.
Yep. Okay.
Then you're going to want to go down to, on the right, you'll scroll down a bit and there's a thing that says Visibility.
Visibility. Oh. Why don't I see that? Okay. Oh, change visibility.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It. So you'll set it to unlisted probably, it's best.
Okay.
Or public. Yeah. And then